Hello, everyone, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of the comedy horror film Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. This is the direct sequel to Ready or Not, which came out in 2019, and once again, it stars Samara Weaving, reprising her role as Grace. Joining her in this cast, you have Kathryn Newton, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Elijah Wood. And this go around, it's set immediately after the events of Ready or Not. It follows Grace as she must protect her estranged sister while being hunted by several elite families in a high-stakes ritual to claim a seat of ultimate power. Ready or Not was the surprise gem of 2019. I loved, well, not in past tense, I still love it. I love Ready or Not. Watched it the other day in preparation to watch Ready or Not 2. I love that movie, and Samara Weaving is this generation's screen queen. She has just made a niche for herself in this genre, going back to The Babysitter. The Babysitter, which was on Netflix, I don't know, about 10 years ago, maybe. But I loved that movie. I loved her in that movie. For somebody that beautiful, to result to being in movies like this where she's covered in blood and gore, you know, and in other films as well, she has no qualms about just being roughed up, beat up, scarred up, shot, stabbed, and everything else. I admire that about her, you know, because you have those certain performers, actresses, even actors who refuse to go into film and get their face covered in blood or face covered in mud or face covered, period, because that's their bread and butter. But she doesn't care. You know, I guess her performance is in the gene, you know, being as though she's the niece of Hugo Weaving, who we all know as Agent Smith from The Matrix. But she is awesome, man. And she is still awesome in this movie as well. Ready or Not 2, I wasn't 100% excited about as much as I was for the first one. This one, I was like, well, how can they really continue this story? How can we get a sequel to that movie? Because it kind of wrapped up fairly nicely. You know, continuing on with this story is no more than a cash grab in my, you know. So I wasn't 100% excited about watching it, even though I was a fan of the first one. I was willing to give this one a shot, being as though not only is Samara Weaving returning, you also have Radio Silence returning to direct this film. They directed the first film. They directed Scream, what was it, 5 and 6, which were decent. They weren't the greatest, but when you watch Scream 7, you're like, oh yeah, Scream 5 and 6 were great in comparisons to that. But they didn't return for 7. For a lot of reasons. It was the lead actors being fired thing and creative differences. So they left and gave us this. They also directed Annabelle. Is it Annabelle? Not Annabelle. The ballerina vampire movie. Abigail, which was also a good film. I like that movie too. This movie, shockingly, was super good. Did it have the same magic and charm as the first film? It didn't. It didn't have that same charm. It was lacking in that, which I kind of expected. But where it lacked in charm, it gained in story. The story was more intense this time. The stakes were very high. When you have a sequel, this is what a sequel is supposed to be. Now, whether it was executed perfectly or not, that's up to debate. It's all subjective. But this is what a sequel is supposed to be. You're supposed to have higher stakes. There's supposed to be more blood, more killing, more everything, because it's the sequel. And this movie delivers on that. The story between Grace and Faith, her sister, who joins the cast, played by Kathryn Newton, I thought was one of the best parts of this movie. I love the chemistry between these two actresses. They felt like sisters. They felt like real sisters. And the dynamic between the two, their history that they have, and where they're currently at as far as their relationship status, was flushed out perfect. That was great and unexpected and well. I mean, done well, executed very well in the midst of all of this chaos that is taking place around them. They still found times for those moments where we can get some character development, some backstory between these two. And all that did was elevate the movie even more. Kathryn Newton, who, I like her in a lot of things, not in everything. It's her acting style. She kind of has this deadpan face, that she has. It really stuck out with me in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, where she plays Cassie in there, Ant-Man's daughter. And I couldn't stand her in that movie because she had the same facial expression the whole movie. Whether it was a deep scene, a comedic scene, a scene with terror and dread, it was the same facial expression. And it just, I couldn't wrap my head around it. Now, I gave it a little pass because that movie was so CG heavy. I'm pretty sure 80 to 90% of that film was shot in front of a green screen. So I understand that it's tough. Not too many performers can really emote in those conditions, and I get it. But it just took me out. But in Abigail, which coincidentally was directed by Radio Silence, she was in that as well. And boy, she was so good in that movie. I loved her in that movie. And I guess it's something about those guys directing her. They know what to get. They know how to get the best out of her. She did a phenomenal job in this movie. We got a David Cronenberg cameo in this movie, which was awesome to see. The famed director of body horror films, Scanners and The Fly, just a awesome director. He cameos. He has a cool little part in this film. Elijah Wood comes in and almost steals this movie. In every scene, he plays the lawyer, and I mean, bruh, he was so stoic. It was something about his performance, so still and cerebral. It was just, I don't know, it was like a change of pace from all of the chaos. Everybody else in this film is manic and just thrown off and crazy, but he was that calming presence throughout, and it just fit the movie, and his mannerisms just made everything work. Loved him. But the show stealer to me, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Buffy herself, who looks like she hasn't aged a day. She looks like she still looked on the CW and all those years ago. She hasn't aged a day. But that's not why she stole this movie for me. She stole the movie with her performance. I loved her performance. I loved her character and the dynamic between her and Shawn Hatosy, who plays her twin brother. And you may know Shawn from The Faculty back in the day, and most recently on The Pit. He was cool too, but I loved them playing twins and bouncing off of one another like they were true yin and yang, and I love that. But man, to see Michelle Gellar in this role was like, I don't know, man. It just made my heart flutter. I really did. I really did like it, and it elevated the movie. Now, like I mentioned to start off the review, yes, being as though it's the sequel and they needed to turn it up to 11, they turned it up to 12 with the gore and the blood. They went all in on some of these kills here, and it was cool, because it fit the story, but it was a lot of blood and gore. Of course, everybody got splattered with blood. It was very gory, much more gorier than the first film. And now, where I have my problems with the movie, and there's a few, it's just a few, it is the gore. I think in some instances, the gore was there just for gore's sake, just for shock value's sake. Yeah, and it didn't need to be. They could have eased off on one of those insanely bloody kills, or maybe two. Just do it off camera or something like that. But that's what you sign up for a Ready or Not movie. But it was very, very gory. And the biggest issue I have is the supporting cast, and that's the elite families that are after our main characters. All of them are idiots. Every single one of them. And that bothered me, with the exception of one. But everybody else was just dumb. I'm like, anybody can get away from these buffoons. They are idiots. I would have liked to see at least 2 or 3 out of these, because it was a contingent of them. It was like, what, 10 of them? It would have been nice to see maybe 2 or 3 of them with some level of intelligence, to get the upper hand and make it a little more difficult for our protagonists in this story. But no, they were all idiots, which made me feel like my main characters weren't in no real danger. I felt like they can really get out of this situation because, they're going up against low IQ human beings, and I'm trying to describe them in a PC way, but they're buffoons. They were complete buffoons. But aside from all that, once again, just like the first one, I had fun with it. And I think if you enjoyed the first Ready or Not, you will enjoy Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. It was really good. It still lacked that charm and maybe some of the fun that the first film had, but the core is still there. Samara Weaving is still a force of nature in this role. And so I give Ready or Not 2, Here I Come, a letter grade of a B-. Yeah, good watch. Good watch. I would like to know, what did you think of Ready or Not 2? Did you like it? Did you love it? Or did you like the first one better? Or do you think it's an improvement? Let me know. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.